Hi, I'm Suzanne Thomson. You know me as Mad Bailey. Welcome to my second ever fireside chat. This week's fireside chat is planning and organizing an 18th century trek. Now, maybe you have heard stories about people going on treks. Maybe you've seen posts online, or maybe you've read articles in Muzzleloader magazine or Muzzle Blast or others. And you thought, why don't I do that? I ought to do that. I'd love to do that. And then maybe you think to yourself, well, I don't have the gear. Maybe I have a little bit of fear. And I'm not really sure who would go with me. So I can't get the gear. I can't get over the fear. I can't get the people to go with me. Can't. My mom always told me, can't, never could. Okay? Now, if your mama is anything like my mama, you're going to knock that can't right off your face. Don't roll those eyes, and you're going to start trying to figure out how to do it. And that's why I'm here tonight, is to help you. If you've thought about going on an 18th century trek, or even if you've thought about leading an 18th century trek, the things we're going to talk about tonight are the basics: people, planning, execution, and an after-action report or review. If you saw my preview, you might have read that as people, planning, and execution, and an after-action review. I didn't quite see it that way until I saw a few of you comment on it that way. But those are the items that we're going to cover tonight, hopefully to encourage you to get over the can'ts and get out into the woods and on the trail. So let's start with people. So you've decided you want to do this, but maybe you don't want to do it alone. And there's a lot of value in doing an 18th century trek by yourself, but to be honest, to be safe, and really it's just a lot more fun if you go with people. They will inspire you, you inspire them, you learn from each other. It's just, for me, a more fulfilling experience if you can share it with other people. Where are you going to get these people? Right? Well, chances are, if you're watching this, you are probably in a Facebook group, or you are in maybe a historic trekking, like historictrekker.com or Frontier Folk, or maybe you're in a rendezvous club and a bunch of you have sat around at night by the fire and you've thought, or you've talked about, maybe we should go on a trek. Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah, let's do it. Well, those are your first and best resources, the ones that you already have. And that's how I got started. I was sitting around a fire one night, I think maybe at Friendship, I'm not sure. Or maybe it was a rendezvous, I can't really remember. But Jim Jacobs was there and he was talking about going on a trek. And I said, man, I'd love to do that. He's like, well, all right. And just a few weeks later, I got an email and Jim outlined everything about the trek, where we were going, what the specific time period was, and he even gave us some resources like a link to the Virginia Gazette so that we could prepare ahead of time and have ideas about the time, the place, and the people that were around the area where we were going to be where we would have our trek. It was amazing. It was a great way to be introduced into it. The next trek, well, it wasn't exactly the very next, but another trek was a bunch of us ladies sitting around at Martin Station. We were having a tea party, and Lisa Jo Cruz and Summer Criswell and a couple other ladies, we were all sitting around drinking our tea, and we were maybe moaning a little bit about, why is it always the guys that go on treks? And Summer, I know Summer was the person who said, well, let's just do it. And Lisa Jo just jumped right in and she said, yeah, let's make this happen. And I think at Deschartes, by the time we got to Deschartes, it was Lisa Jo, myself, and a few other women, Beth Elert, Jana Gatliff. I think maybe Jill Frost went on that first one, but I can't remember. And a woman that I had never even met, but I had admired so much on Facebook, Christina Edmonds had reached out to me. She and I had never even met in real life, and she reached out and said, hey, I hear you're doing this trek. I want to go. So the people will kind of find you if you start talking about it. And the people that are interested in this type of thing, they already have a little bit in common, right? I mean, obviously, we're all weird, dressed in funny clothes, like to live this experimental archaeology. So we have that in common, but that isn't enough. I want to encourage you, when you're talking to people about your trek, give some serious and careful consideration to the people and let them know what you're interested in and help to guide whether they are maybe the best person for this particular trek or not. So for me, I have gotten to a point, because I like to open the opportunity to a lot of different people. So what I've started doing is I have a light night shakedown trek, which is basically a beginner's, it's designed for beginners. Easy topography, not a lot of distance. It's just one night, and it's a way to introduce ladies who are interested, but they're not quite ready for the full-blown, what I like to call the trailblazer type of trek. That's the hard trek. That's a Mac Daddy where you have to train and be prepared, and you have to physically be able to do those things. So when you're thinking about, or you're talking to people, maybe you have to be upfront and say, well, this trek might not be the best, but maybe we could do another one. So you have to, that's part of being a leader, is gearing things towards the people you're with, but maybe pushing them just a little bit outside of their comfort zone. And you might ask yourself, do I even really need a leader? Am I a leader? Do I need to be one? And does our group need to have a leader? Well, I would say if there are only two of you, maybe not. Why? There's just two of you. You don't have to have a leader in that situation necessarily. But if there's more than two, if there are two to maybe say as many as 10, now you do need a clearly defined leader. And it's not because you have to have somebody with a big ego and a big head like mine, although it doesn't hurt, apparently. It's not about ego. It's not about having a big head. It's about when you're under duress, you need to have a defined person who is going to make the decisions and who is going to act as a leader that other people in the group can trust and rely on. And that's what being a leader is all about. And sometimes being that leader means you have to say, this isn't for you this time, but I'll make an opportunity for you for the next time. If you're going to be a good leader, part of that, and really, even if you're not the leader, but you are going on a trek, it's my second thing, planning. Okay, so we've talked about the people. Now we're going to talk about planning. I love planning. I love it. Honestly, I like the planning part almost as much as I like the trek itself. Planning is putting together the ideas that you're talking about with your group. It's about coming together as a group and deciding ahead of time a certain number of things. Like, for example, where are you going to go? What time of the year are you going to go? What are your basic rules? What are your basic guidelines? Or what are your objectives that you want to get out of this? Why are you doing it? And it's about coming together on some things like historical accuracy. How far do you want to go with your trek? And talk about that as a group. And I'll admit, you know me, if you know me, you know I usually am my own worst example of things. I didn't do a great job of this on one of the treks that I went to, and it was really unfair because the other ladies that I was with had really pared down to absolute essentials. They did everything to be as almost 100% correct as they could be for themselves. And then I had something that really was not historically correct. And I don't blame them. They were a little aggravated by that, as well they should be. So talk about things like that ahead of time. Now I talked about some of a variety of things there. Let's break them down a little bit further. So let's go back to when and where. If you know me and you know the treks that I've put on with the ladies, we almost always go in spring or fall. Now why do we do that? We go in March usually, this year excepted obviously. The reason I specifically chose March is because fewer snakes, ticks, mosquitoes, and people. Pretty simple, you know? Fewer of all of those things are better if you're out dressed like this in the woods doing what you might call historic interpretation, living history, experimental archaeology. Chances are you don't want to run into snakes or people or ticks. So that's one of the things. The other thing is I like the challenge that weather can. Waking up in snow on your blankets, oh my gosh, it was the most beautiful experience. It's cold, it's freezing, but it was an extra challenge. It was beautiful. And at the end, just like most things that are a challenge, it was more fun because of the challenge. So I like it because of that. That's just one idea. Same thing goes generally for the fall. Fewer of all of those things. And again, the challenge of the weather. And frankly, let's face it, these are not like summer clothes, okay? So I just personally, I prefer spring and fall. Now where you want to go. Where you go is going to be very dependent upon a variety of things. It could be very dependent upon the people who are going with you. I've had people from as far out, like Christina, she was out in Utah, Chicago, or not Chicago, but Illinois, Ohio, Virginia. So people coming, Pennsylvania, coming all over. We needed a central area. Now, I'm not fortunate at this time to own a massive piece of land to do this. So I have to choose, or I have chosen parks. Now, if you're like me and you don't have a beautiful, huge piece of land, or you know somebody who does, then you have to go to a local estate or a national park or a forest. National parks and forests are great because they have dispersed camping. Now, if you don't know what dispersed camping is, it's just a simple way of saying it's not a campground. You can go pretty much wherever you want within the park grounds, and you do have to comply with the standard rules and regulations of that park, and maybe that's not for you. If that's not for you, then you need to coordinate with getting on private land. Otherwise, you do want to practice things like leave no trace, and that just means you're taking care of the land and avoiding unnecessary impact on it. For example, if you're in a dispersed camping situation and there are already pre-established fire rings or a place where clearly people have camped before you, that would be where you would choose to camp. Something else I mentioned that I want to bring up as it relates to the leave no trace concept, I mentioned groups from 2 to 10. Could you have more than 10 people go on a trek? Certainly you could. But for me, for the groups that I've been with, typically 10 to 12. 10 is ideal. Anything more than that, you tend to sort of split into subgroups, and maybe there's some less valuable dynamic that can come up. A larger group like that, it's also going to have a larger impact on the land. So that's just something to think about. So where you choose to go is important, and choosing the topography that's going to suit you and your group. It's great if you can go out and pre-scout. I've gone out before and pre-scouted. I've had to go out and cache water before because there just was not a good natural source of water. And understanding this is 2020. You have to be prepared with water ahead of time, either by caching it, carrying it, or carrying a modern device where you can use that modern device to purify or I can't think of the word, but you know what I mean, to make sure that the water is safe to drink, because nobody wants to be on a trek and have Giardia, if that's how you say it. You know what I mean. So plan ahead on that. So maybe you pre-scout the area, or maybe you don't. There's a lot of value to pre-scouting. Because no matter how hard you try, I can tell you, I prepare maps ahead of time. I study those maps and I get on all the online resources. I call the rangers. I talk to local rangers to find out as much as I possibly can. But let me tell you, it doesn't always come to, you think you've done everything and it doesn't always work. Last year's trek, the ladies and I, everything I read said that it was going to be a 6-mile hike. Not true. From the minute we got there, there was a sign big as anything. It said 9 miles. Nobody mentioned it was 9 miles ahead of time. I never saw a sign that said it was a 9-mile loop, but it was. So some value in pre-scouting. And making sure that you're prepared for the terrain. And that's part of that preparation. My friend Laura Suppinger, she posts frequently her trek prep, and so do I. Mary Brandenburg and Beth Sturdivant, they started their own little small group to inspire each other and others to get prepared for our trek. Now, being prepared ahead of time, or these trek prep hikes, that means putting on your stockings and shoes, whatever they're going to be, and walking a similar distance to what you're going to be walking on your trek. It means putting on your pack and carrying it, making sure that you are comfortable as comfortable as can be. Okay, let's face it. People ask me all the time, they're like, oh, what shoes do you wear? Are they comfortable? No, they're not comfortable. They're never comfortable. But trek prep means getting out there in your stockings and in the shoes that you'll be wearing. So I highly encourage that. And if the weather is horrible and you do it on a treadmill, that's fine. But let me tell you, it's not the same. So I encourage you to get out and do that trek prep. Being prepared means other things too. For example, this year I took a wilderness first aid class because I've always been lucky. It just has worked out that I think every time we've been out on the trail, the ladies and I, someone has been a trained medical professional of some level. But as part of being a leader and part of being prepared, that meant that I felt like I needed to be prepared at a higher level than I was. I was certainly not I don't even compare to the others that have been out, but a higher level for myself, always constantly improving. That's part of reenacting as a whole. But safety is number one. Yes, you want to have fun. Yes, you want to do all of these other things, but you have to come home at the end of this, right? You have people that love you, people that want to see you at the end of this, and you're going to have a great story to tell, but you do have to be safe. So part of the early planning and deciding how historically accurate, if you need to take medications with you, take them. If you have a medical condition, you need to disclose that up front. I can remember being out with somebody and being a little surprised about a medical situation and how they perceived that. Don't surprise your companions. That's not the kind of surprise you want to put on them. So take your medications, be safe in that way. Also, and now this is probably because it's usually the ladies and I, but I tell the ladies never, never, never disclose where we're going ahead of time. And yeah, there's a few Indians out there, and you know who you are, who just think it'd be hilarious to have a big, they'd like to surprise us on the trail. I know a few husbands who wouldn't mind surprising us on the trail, but that's not what it's about. This, for us, for the ladies, it is about doing this on our own. So I don't want any unnecessary surprises, and for our safety, never disclose that. Also, if as far as that is concerned, I'm not even 100% sure you should disclose where you've been. Now, if it's private property, you don't want other people to go there. Just give that some thought. It's up to you. But back to those people who love you and want you to come home, that's part of planning, is telling them exactly where you're going to be. Where we go, typically there isn't cell service, so let them know. I might not check in with you every day while I'm gone, but you do have to have a drop dead time. What that means is if you're not in contact, in some level of communication by this specific time period, for Ken and I, it's usually like if you haven't heard from me by 5 o'clock on Sunday, oh yeah, now is the time to call the ranger, to call the police, call the National Guard. I don't care, I'm just kidding. But you do have to have that drop dead time because terrible things can happen. We are out in the wilderness and there are knives, there are bears, there are fires, there are any number of things that could happen. So be prepared in that way, in letting someone know when you'll be leaving. As I said, I typically end up going to national parks or national forests. You have to check in with the ranger station. You have to get a dispersed camping permit in most cases, and those will say when you're going in and when you're coming out. So those are just part of the preparation. So you've got your people. You've done all your planning. You know where you're going. You know who's going. You know your rules. You've decided all these things up front. One other thing we didn't talk about is food. I do want to mention that. You guys have heard the saying about hypothermia. One of the ways that you can tell if somebody is becoming hypothermic is they get cold and dumb. They start making really bad decisions, or they're not able to make decisions, and they just seem to get more and more lethargic. Now, I've never heard anybody say this, but my new saying is, for myself, and I'm not implying this as anyone else, but for myself, I get hungry and dumb. I'm just saying. A lot of times when I'm planning a trek, I have thought to myself, oh, I'm going on my own hook. I don't want to carry a bunch of extra stuff. I just want the least amount that I have to have. Well, and I could always lose a few pounds, so I don't mind that idea. But the problem is you're going to be expending a lot more energy. You're carrying that pack. You're walking. You're camping. You have to build your shelter. You have to get your firewood. It's cold, chances are. All of those things are expending your energy. And whereas normally maybe you only need 1,500 to 2,000 calories a day, maybe less, maybe more, depending on you. When you're out there on a scout, you need calories. That's fuel for you. It's fuel for your brain. It's fuel for your body. So you have to have a good combination of your protein, carbohydrates, and fats. Now I think, and I have a note, but I won't find it here. I can post it later exactly what that ratio is, but I believe it's 10% fat, 30% protein, and 60% carbohydrates to give you that energy. Now the other thing about food is planning ahead. Are you going to go on your own hook, or are you going to do a group mess or group kitchen, community feeding? That's to me, the worst thing. That's the thing I hate the most trying to figure out. That's up to you and your group, whether you want to have each person be responsible for themselves. My friend Jan brought up a great point. She said, well, what if somehow I were to get lost from everybody else? I don't want to be the guy that was holding a potato and that's it. Well, I get that. And I like the idea that she wants to be as completely self-sufficient as possible. And I've been that person before too. I also like the idea of being, I wouldn't have to carry a bag of rice just like he does, just like she does, just like she does. I wouldn't have to carry 5 kettles, 5 skillets, 5 of everything or 10 of everything. Instead, one person carries a larger kettle. One person carries maybe a larger skillet, and we divide the rice out amongst each other so we're not all carrying the same amount. See, this is why I hate it. That's not my favorite part, as you can see. But now that you've gone through all this, you know what your objectives are, your people, your planning, all that. Yes, finally, you're out in the woods. This is what you came here for. My experience, and this is just mine, oh gosh, I have to tell you, Leslie Martin Conwell, she had a little sign that she held up on her Weotnon page, and she said, Mrs. Expert, and then she crossed it out. And she said, I am not the expert here. I just have access to this information, and I want to share it with you. That's me right here. I'm not the expert at this, but I am sharing my experience with you. My experience is that the first day of the trek is usually getting to know each other. Maybe none of you have met before, maybe only a few of you know each other. It's about forming a good group and about navigating and just getting down the trail. It's about reading the map and planning, how far you're going to go before you take your next break. And then you get out there, you start forming those bonds, you start helping each other. My rules, if you don't know me, every trek I've been on that I lead, I have 3 rules, and they're very simple. They're crude. This is not, maybe it is a PG show and not a G-rated show. My rules are carry your own crap, be ready, willing, and able to carry someone else's crap, and don't bitch, okay? It's real simple. Now, breaking that down, though, means that when you're out there, we're all out there together. If we're all out there together and it's snowing on all of us. If it's raining on all of us. So don't bitch about it. And be prepared. If you have to carry your own stuff. And this is something that I really am adamant about. Whereas the first rule is carry your own crap, the second rule is be ready, willing, and able to carry someone else's. And that comes with the idea of asking for help when you need it. I can just remember so many times being on the trail, what really bonds you to people is helping one another. It's that moment when Peggy was wearing her moccasins and it was snowing like crazy and she just couldn't get any traction. She looked like the road runner, like her legs were moving but her body wasn't. And honestly, it was like her sisters of the trail came to her aid and helped her. Now, she let us help her. That's important. I can't stress that enough. Helping each other builds the bonds that will last forever, honestly, I really believe. But you have to ask for that help sometimes, and you have to be willing to accept it. All right, so you're out on the trail, you've navigated, you get to your first spot, it's evening or getting close to evening, or when you need to find your established camp. You get to your camp and you throw everything down and all you want to do is rest. Get right back up because it's not time to rest. It's time to collect firewood. So collect all that firewood, whatever you have, go get twice as much, And now you're building your shelters. Building your shelters together is, again, it's part of the bonding. Maybe you've planned ahead of time and you know, on our light night trek, Shelley Geyer and Ellen Rice, they knew they were gonna, no they didn't, they just figured it out when they got out there that they were going to shelter together. I was going to do my own shelter, and I set it up completely wrong because I said I'm my own worst example oftentimes. I set it all up, it was beautiful, and I was just starting to put my blankets in under my oilcloth that was sort of an open face. And that's when the wind just sort of hit me right in the face. Open face, into the wind, completely wrong. So dumb. So what did I do? I took it down. I didn't want to face maybe being in a storm later that night, which was very possible. So I took it down, and then I ended up sharing with Stacy Moore. So we had our own little double wide. Those are the things that make the experience better. So now you have all your shelters up. It's time to cook dinner, make your fire. One of the things that I always ask the ladies is come prepared to share something. Come just to share a skill or a talent. Roseanne, she sings. Beth and Jana, they all three have many talents that they share with us. But for me, when those ladies by themselves or together sing around the campfire, that's why I do this. Brings tears to my eyes thinking about it. So that is part of it. And then, so sharing things. Jana helped us build a fire. Stacy has built a fire for us and demonstrated it, teaching another person how to do it. Last year, Stacy Tanneker, I don't think I said that right, but Stacy taught me how to tie some new knots that I didn't know when we had to throw our bear bags because we were in bear country. Peggy and Jan and Laura, they are our medicinal plant ladies. They teach us all about that. Cindy taught us about geology. Come to your trek willing and able to share something, and not just a skill, but share something of yourself. Because when you're sitting around the fire at night and you're drinking your tea or your coffee or your rum or whatever, that fire, it's building more than just heat. It's building connection. Sitting there with the people around the fire, you'll remember those moments the rest of your life. I can remember one time it was raining, drizzling, and I was laying in my little squirrel's nest, and the fire kind of perked up, and I saw my friend Bob Browder perk up the fire, got it up going again, and he sat down by a tree. And I was like, oh, well, I guess it's time to get up. So I got up, and he and I sat by the fire, and we talked about some stuff for a while. It was lovely. And then I got my kettle out, and I started making coffee, and our friend Dan came, and he got his kettle out, and he was making coffee, and we're sitting there just chatting away. And finally I was like, gosh, it seems like the sun ought to be up by now. No. It was 3:30 in the morning. It was not morning. It was the middle of the night still. One of the things that I have suggested many times on a trek on Saturday night, or well, on any night on a trek, stay up as late as you can, okay? Stay up, tell stories, laugh, sing songs, whatever you do. Don't go to bed early, even if you're tired, because I got news for you. You're not gonna sleep. You think you're gonna sleep. You think, oh my gosh, I've carried this pack for however many miles today, I'm exhausted. I'm gonna sleep like a baby. No, you won't. You're gonna toss, you're gonna turn, you're gonna be this way and that way. So stay up late, minimize your time trying to sleep, and don't even think you're gonna be comfortable, because you're probably not. You can do things to make it better. You can build a nice nest of leaves, like I said earlier, my squirrel's nest. That's gonna help. You're gonna have your blanket or blankets. You can make it better. But I don't think I've ever spent a night on the ground that it was like, oh, that was just so nice. What a good sleep. So that's just part of it. execution of your trek, it's going to have many variables. It's going to be up to you and to your group to decide what's going to be the objective. What are you trying to accomplish? That's up to you. But those are the things that mean the most to me, the challenge and the adventure of it. I did it, woohoo! So we've talked about the people, we've talked about planning, we've talked about execution, and now you did it. You got out there, you did it, and now hopefully you have one of the things that I think is really important. It's a small thing and it is extra weight, but I really, really love to have my my little notebook with me. For one reason, I have my map always preparing ahead of time. I told you I go over those maps over and over. To do a map like this, I doubt you can really see the fine detail, but this is a topographic map. This helps me personally to visualize it. By drawing a map like this and making it look more 18th century, it brings it to life a little bit more mentally for me. So if I were to get lost, I have a map and I have the general topography, so something like that. But the other thing is to have your little notebook and a pencil, there we go, so you can take notes along the way. Or maybe you want to have some notes prepared ahead of time. So if you see certain tracks, oh, those are bear tracks. Good to know. Something like that. Those leaves, those are poison ivy leaves. Now chances are you probably don't need that. And maybe I don't either, but it's a great tool for learning. So I love having my little notebook with me. And I've taken notes all along on the trek, but when I get back from my trek, I use those notes for my after-action report or my after-action review. One of the things that you're going to do is you're just going to record your memories. What stood out to you? What was successful? What was unsuccessful? Did you meet your goals or not? I would suggest that you, in your planning phase, something I forgot to mention is a gear list. Now you think to yourself, I don't need to write everything down. Of course you don't, because I've already written it down for you. All you have to do is go to my webpage, outdoorwildernessladies.com, and you can download the checklist. And you might think, I don't need a checklist. But here's the value of it. Number one, before you go on the trek, you can just go straight down the list. I have it, I have it, I have it, I need it, I need to borrow it. My group, my ladies, have been so fortunate. We've received so many fabulous donation of items. We've gotten rope, we've gotten 2 shelters, or oilcloth shelters, a nice little tin for fire kit, other wonderful things. So I try and make it possible that people can, even if they don't have an item, we will share amongst ourselves, or I'll be able to provide it for them. But the only way you know if you have something or you don't is to have a checklist. So at the end, now you use that checklist to get ready. After the event, you go through the checklist and you mark off the things that you didn't use or you didn't need. Now, let me give you a suggestion. Don't delete, as in erase, an item off of your list. And the reason I say that is because if you delete it, the next trek, it could be a year before you go on your next one, or it could be longer than a year. And you might think to yourself, oh, that's right, I do want to go ahead and take that trivet. That would be a great thing to have over the fire. Well, if the last trek you went on, you wrote down or you crossed off the trivet, that says to you in your mind, oh, that's right. I took the trivet, but I really didn't need to. That was extra weight that I didn't need. I don't need to take that. So that's just my experience. That's the way I've done it in the past, is just cross it off. Don't delete it. And if you want that list, just let me know and I'll guide you to where that is. So your memories, your gear checking, consider the people that you went with. Would you want to go with them again? And consider yourself. Were you a good contributor? Even if you were the leader, did you do a good job leading? What could you have done better? Could you have planned better? Could you have facilitated more on the trek? Could you have taught more, shared more? Could you have been a little less pushy, a little less talkative? I don't know. But do a nice self-analysis too. After you've kind of gone through all of that, I encourage you so much to share that after action review or after action report with the others that are in your group, and be honest with people and be direct. Don't hurt anybody's feelings. Nobody needs that. But if you need somebody to improve in an area, or you're saying that I know I need to improve on an area, that again, it builds the relationship and it builds that trust. The other thing that I would love to see is write about it. Tell your stories. Do presentations like this. I just told you earlier, I am not Mrs. Expert. I am not an expert at all. The only talent that I have, or expertise that I have, maybe above another person, is that I can talk about it and I can write about it. But so could you, chances are. Try it. The reason I want you to do that is because I want you to inspire others to do it too. If you share your success, if you share your failure, someone else might be sitting around the fire that night or sitting at the tavern that night and go, you know, I've always wanted to go on a trek. I've always thought about doing that. I'm going to ask her or him about going. So share those stories. If somebody would have told me 10 years ago that I would be leading treks, I would have totally laughed. I would have never believed that. Somebody took a chance on me. Jim invited me to go, and it inspired me. And now, hopefully, through this fireside presentation, I've inspired you to lead a trek. The basic principles that we've talked about were choosing your people, proper planning, executing, and an after-action report. Now, finally, I do want to just point out that, like I said, I'm not the expert. I've done it a few times, and the more I do it, the more I know. But I also love to read. One of the things I love to read Muzzleloader magazine. Hopefully, you are a subscriber to Muzzleloader, and you will see an article next month that is exactly this topic. Who among you shall lead? Organizing and planning an 18th century trek. So of course I love to read Muzzleloader, Muzzle Blast, other publications, American Frontiersman, other publications like that. A few books that I find very, very helpful: Camping and Woodcraft. This is by Kephart, and if that title sounds familiar, Camping and Woodcraft, it might be because you're familiar with Woodcraft and Camping by Nessmuk. Well, there's some creative titling, isn't it? I wasn't sure what to call this presentation, but I knew it wasn't going to be Camping and Woodcraft or Woodcraft and Camping. I also have learned a tremendous amount from this book. This is AMC's Mountain Skills Manual. This is a great, great resource. Of course, it's all modern camping, hiking, and they don't call it trekking, but backpacking. But it's an excellent book. Something else I've just recently finished, it's called Under the Stars by Dan White, and it's a history of camping in America. It's very quirky, very interesting, but I think you might like it if you like this type of thing. Well, I hope that our fireside chat has been interesting, educational, inspiring in some way or another. And the way you could really prove that to me is if I see you out in the woods. If I see you out there leading a trek or a scout, then I will feel like I've fulfilled my mission. So thanks for being here tonight. I'm Suzanne Thomson, Madame Bailey. Maybe next week we'll have another fireside chat. I don't know.